This is the review of the 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan. Now, this is an important model for Volkswagen because it's actually their best-selling vehicle. Size-wise, it slots above the smaller Taos, but below the larger three-row Atlas. Unfortunately, in recent years, the Tiguan has fallen to the lower end of CR's scoring among compact SUVs due to sluggish acceleration, iffy reliability, and below-average owner satisfaction, those last two items from our annual auto surveys. But for 2025, the Tiguan has been redesigned. It has a more powerful engine, updated exterior styling, a new interior controls layout, and Volkswagen has done away with the third-row seat option. All Tiguans come with a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder with 201 horsepower, mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission. Front-wheel drive comes standard with Volkswagen's 4Motion all-wheel drive available. So for our test program, we bought a 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan SE 4Motion. The starting price was $33,795, but with a few options, including a panoramic sunroof and the destination charge of $1,425, the total cost of our test vehicle came to $36,825. EPA fuel economy for the all-wheel drive model we tested is 22 miles per gallon city and 30 miles per gallon highway, or 25 miles per gallon combined. The final assembly point for the Tiguan is Puebla, Mexico. As with most compact SUVs, the Tiguan is very easy to get into, but honestly, it actually all starts with these conventional door handles. We're seeing more and more vehicles with flush-mounted door handles that have to pop out, or you have to use two hands to pull them open. And this is just regular conventional pull-towards-you door handle. The seat is just a little below hip height, so it means you can just basically slide over and onto the seat. You're not falling down like in a car or climbing up in a larger SUV. And the door sill is reasonably narrow, so it's not a really big deal to get your feet up and over, and the entryway is pretty tall. So basically it's just hop on in. That's pretty easy. So once you're situated behind the wheel, you'll find that there's plenty of headroom. There's a wide and well-placed left footrest, and the door armrest is also well-placed with nice comfy padding. But then things get a little odd. For one thing, a lot of us found that our right knee gets hemmed in by this center console, and it's plastic. Some automakers put some padding there, but the Tiguan doesn't have that. So it makes you feel a little hemmed in, and it's just hard. When you have the steering wheel at a lower, more comfortable position, which for me actually is when it's at its lowest position, that's where I prefer to have it. It blocks some of the icons. For instance, you can't see the turn signal icons, and you can't see the automatic high beam icons. So that's not the best, and we're seeing more and more of that with these new driver's screens where the steering wheel ends up blocking some stuff. Another design element that we found a bit odd is that while it's nice to have a center armrest that is adjustable both fore and aft as well as up and down, so you can find that, kind of just right elbow position, the problem is that, for one thing, when you pull up on this lever, the release lever, it actually pinched your skin when you would do that, which is, doesn't feel great. And the other thing is that if you like to have the armrest more forwards, it actually blocks access to the wireless phone charger, which is right here. So that means if you're driving like this, when you get out, you're gonna have to move this back every time to take your phone out. And then once you get back in to start driving again, put your phone back in, you're gonna have to move this forwards. And you're gonna have to do that every time, assuming if you like the armrest in a more forward position. So the previous Tiguan had lots of buttons and knobs, which are typically easier to use. They have a new controls layout now. So let's talk about the positives first, which is that this infotainment screen is pretty easy to use. It responds quickly, and it's easy to switch back and forth between like Apple CarPlay and then going back to the built-in system. The other things that we like are that it still has conventional like buttons for the steering wheel. Some VWs have switched to more of a touch capacitive slider mechanism, which isn't as easy to use. So we like that we still have regular buttons here. And then I like that there's this large centrally located volume knob. It's nice to have such a big knob with well-defined detents. And also, for safety's sake, I like that the emergency flashers button is pretty bright. It's pretty obvious, centrally located. Just a quick press of the driver and you can let people know that there's something going on ahead that they need to be aware of. Unfortunately, the climate system has taken a turn for the worse because it's lost all of its physical controls. Just about the only thing you can do with just like one press are these to change the temperature with these little buttons here. but they're really touch capacitive. They're not true buttons. And this whole area is so dim, it's hard to even see them. There's a lot of glare. Another oddity is that there's 2 volume controls. Well, really there's 3 if you include the steering wheel button. So there's the large one here that I talked about already, but there's another volume controller. This is a slider function just below the screen here. And as with the temperature controls, it's not the easiest to use because it's very dim. There's a lot of glare. And then when you go back to this volume knob, it's not just a volume knob. If you press it, it can change the different driving modes. And then also it can control via this atmospheres. This also controls the ambient lighting inside the car. So one knob is doing 3 different functions, and we really don't think that's a great idea. The quality and presentation of the Tiguan's interior is honestly one of the car's stronger suits compared to most other vehicles in the compact SUV class. It has kind of a clean, minimalist European design flair to it. And there's some nice touches in here too. You know, the glossy black trim on the doors, this tan stitched material that's on the doors and it goes across the dashboard. It's nice and soft, has a good look to it. And then also you've got this silver trim that goes across the dash. Those things just give the car a little bit of flair. And we also like the nice wrapped steering wheel that feels good in your hands. But there are a lot of hard plastic panels throughout the cabin, and we notice some uneven gaps here and there, like for instance on the center console. You can see there's a bigger gap here in the middle than there is down here. And also, if you anchor your hand up here to use the screen, it's sometimes easier to press things on the screen. It has a really rough edge up there. As with up front, it's pretty easy to get into the Tiguan's rear seat. And it all starts with a pretty wide opening rear door, along with a flat roofline. A lot of SUVs have a sloping roofline, which means that as you get in, you're gonna have to duck to avoid that sloping roof, but this is nice and horizontal. And then the seats, as with up front, are pretty close to hip height for me, so it means when you're getting in, you're just sliding more over and onto them. The one issue I did notice is that for me, the sill is a little tall, so sometimes my feet get a little bit hung up when I'm getting back out. And my leg also tends to rub a little bit. I have shorter legs, but it does tend to rub on the rocker panel as you get out. But a real positive is that it has one of the least intrusive rear wheel wells that I've come across in a while. Typically, they intrude enough that you have to kind of really contort your body to get around. But with the Tiguan, you just get out, and there you go. But once you're inside, you'll find that the rear seat, just like the last Tiguan, is quite roomy and very comfortable. Headroom is pretty decent. What really stands out for me is there's so much foot space underneath the front seats, as well as tons of knee room. Look at all this space here. And the seat itself has a comfortable posture. The bottom cushion isn't as raked back as some, but it doesn't need to be because it's quite long. So it provides pretty good under leg support even when your feet are flat on the floor, at least for someone with kind of shorter legs like me. It has comfortable padding. It's not too soft, it's not too firm. And then it has just a little bit of contouring to kind of both the seat back and the bottom cushion to kind of help keep you in place. And then both armrests are pretty well placed and comfortable. You can see this one's quite squishy. They're pretty symmetrically placed, so you're not at like kiltered angles. And then the door armrest as well, it's pretty easy for your elbow to get over there and reasonably comfortable padding. So the cargo room has been reduced slightly over the last Tiguan just due to a difference in the interior design, but it still has a very competitive amount of space back here among compact SUVs. And it's really nice that they have levers back here that makes it easy if you're going for max volume. Just pull these levers and the second row drops down. It's not quite a flat load floor. It does ramp up a little bit, but it's pretty good. And one of the other great things about the cargo area is that if you pull this up, what do we have here? A compact spare tire. And there's just something very comforting about having an actual tire that you can put on if you get a flat. So we keep a logbook of every vehicle that comes through our test program, and the Tiguan's logbook was filled with overwhelmingly positive comments about the front seats. It really has a great combination of comfort and support. If you look at the seat, you can see that it has really well-pronounced side bolsters on both the seat back and the bottom cushion, and that really helps hold you in place through corners. It has padding that's not too squishy, not too firm, so it's really just a nice combination. And our tested SE version came with 4-way adjustable lumbar support for the driver's seat, not just 2-way, but 4-way. So people who have lower back issues, they're really going to appreciate that, especially on longer drives. So outward visibility is really important for safety because you need to be able to see the other vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists that are on the road. And this is a real positive for the Tiguan. It starts with these windshield pillars, which are slimmer than most vehicles on the road these days, and even better, they don't get really thick at the base like many vehicles do, because that forces you to have to really peer around them to see through corners. And the side mirrors, they're pretty good size, which we like because they give nice rearward views, but also they're mounted on the doors, so they're a little bit lower. They're pretty easy to see over. It also benefits from pretty large, both long and tall side windows, both front and rear. But then things get a little more restricted. The B pillars, these are the side pillars here, are pretty thick. And that means that it's a little bit difficult to do lane changes on the highway. You just have to look a little harder to make sure no one's in your blind spot than with some vehicles. And then as with most SUVs, the rearmost roof pillars are really quite thick, so they form some pretty big blind spots back there. But then again, the rear window is larger than in a lot of compact SUVs, so we like to see that. So unfortunately, there's some real inconsistencies with the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder and the 8-speed automatic transmission in the Tiguan. There's delays from the transmission, it's slow to react at times, as well as there's a little bit of turbo lag. So we notice big differences between how it reacts, whether you're gentle with the throttle, where it typically performs better and is smoother, or if you're harder with the throttle. If you're harder with the gas pedal, that's when you get these delays, these lurches. And same thing with whether you have the engine stop-start system on or off. If you have it on, and then it's a fuel-saving measure and reduces emissions, so when you come to a stoplight, it's gonna turn the gas engine off. But then it restarts it pretty quickly when you take your foot off the brake pedal, but it kind of restarts it with a shudder, so you feel that in the cabin, and there's a little bit of a lurch as you get going. And it performs better if you have that system off, but it is annoying that you have to go through the screen here instead of having just like a physical button somewhere. And then if you're gentle with the throttle and it's off, that keeps the engine on. If you're gentle with the throttle, it's gonna react more normally. But when you're a little harder with the gas pedal, that's when we notice some inconsistencies of operation. You can get some pretty big delays like there. I was pressed pretty hard on the gas pedal, and at first it wasn't going at all. And then when it did, when it kind of caught in a sense, it brought the power on really abruptly. So those are the kinds of things we're noticing. And there are also times where it just doesn't shift that smoothly. Again, if you're gentle with the gas pedal, usually it shifts pretty smoothly. But sometimes when you're harder, you might ask for a downshift and it comes a little bit in a rough fashion. So there's just too many inconsistencies of operation that make it not the most pleasant powertrain to deal with, which is kind of a bummer because it actually has really good power for the class. But even there, you could feel that was kind of a little bit of a slightly rough upshift, which usually upshifts are quite smooth. It's more the downshift in most cars that they struggle with. The Tiguan's handling is a little bit sharper than most of its competitors. The steering turns into corners pretty naturally. It's not too quick, it's not too slow, and it delivers some actual feel or feedback through the wheel about the level of grip that the front tires have as you go through these corners, as well as you can feel a little bit of pavement texture come through. And we really like to see that. We're seeing more and more vehicles these days that really have kind of numb steering that doesn't really speak to the driver. And so we appreciate when we get a vehicle like this that handles pretty well, gives the driver good feedback. It does a pretty good job resisting body roll when you go through corners. If you push it pretty hard, then you're gonna see some of that body roll, but the car still remains quite responsive when you make changes to the throttle. So sometimes you suffer a trade-off. If you have pretty good handling like you do in the Tiguan, then what happens, to the ride comfort? But it's actually a pretty good compromise. It's certainly on the firm side. Kind of has that tautness that a lot of German cars are known for, but it still does a pretty good job absorbing most bumps. Again, you hit a pretty hard pothole, deep pothole, some kind of bump like that, it's gonna punch through to the cabin pretty well, but it still does a pretty good job of having a layer of absorption over most of those bumps. And we also like that it does a pretty good job keeping, occupant sway. If you get on an undulating surface, sometimes you can see that, the driver or the occupants are kind of jostling back and forth, or maybe there's some front to rear pitch, but this car does a pretty good job keeping things controlled. The Tiguan's cabin is competitively quiet with other compact SUVs. You definitely get some wind noise when you get up to about 70 miles per hour on the highway, but it's not too bad. There's also a pretty constant level of road and tire noise, but again, it's not out of the ordinary for this segment. We were a little mixed in our opinions on the engine. Some people thought it sounded okay and weren't bothered by it, but others like me, we thought when you accelerate kind of hard, there's a little bit of a grittiness or a coarseness to it that's just really not all that pleasant to listen to. So as far as active safety systems, the Tiguan pretty much comes with everything that we think are really important here at CR. And that includes automatic emergency braking with pedestrian detection, automatic emergency braking that also operates at highway speeds, as well as blind spot warning, rear cross traffic warning, a rear occupant alert system, and a rear belt minder. So we really like rear occupant alert systems because they help prevent children or pets from being left behind in a too hot or too cold a vehicle. And also rear belt minders are important because that alerts the driver if someone hasn't buckled up at the beginning of the trip, and it also tells the driver if someone unbuckles during the trip. So those are really important to have in a car. There are a lot of compact SUVs to choose from, but the Tiguan certainly has some strong suits. And one of the biggest of those is that it's more engaging to drive than most of its competitors, largely due to its agile handling. We also found the seats really comfortable front and rear, and there's a high level of fit and finish for the class. But while the powertrain is strong, the uneven bursts of power and low-speed delays are kind of annoying to deal with. We also found that the controls are less easy to use than the last Tiguan, and by the time we tallied up all the numbers, its road test score actually went down from the previous version. So that's our video review of the 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan. To see all the details of our testing and results from other compact SUVs, head to consumerreports.org.